Hi everyone, number one Marmaduke fan here. Well, today we're going to try combining iPhone video with GarageBand audio. So tell me in the comments if you think this is an improvement over the audio cutting in and out in previous videos. So I'm looking at Mega Man, I think this is Volume 8. Yep, Volume 8 Redemption. There's more people who worked on this than just the three in the front. So I usually focus on the art and the artists, but this is a book where I have to give like special appreciation to Ian Flynn. I would be what you would call a casual ex Mega Man fan. I've probably beaten like 6 Mega Man games in total and gotten stuck on a couple more. So there's some people where like Mega Man is their jam in the game world, and for me it was like one of many jams that I enjoyed growing up, and they were very simple, video game structures. Even if you want to talk about how something like Mega Man X has an implied story of growth and overcoming opposition, there's not that much story to them, but there is a story implied by them. And what I think Ian Flynn has done is he's managed to tap into some of the ideas implied by the video games to make a great story, and he's done a really good job noticing, I think, some of what the obvious inspirations for Mega Man were. I'm thinking of Pinocchio and Osamu Tezuka's Astro Boy. I think that Mega Man is more than a little bit inspired by Astro Boy or Mighty Atom, as it was called in Japan. Some of the character designs are almost like one-for-one parallels of the old manga. And so what I think Ian Flynn has done is he's tried to bring a little bit of the robot or puppet boy who wants to be a real boy emotion into his story, which is what the Pinocchio story is. The puppet wants to be a real boy. In the book, Pinocchio's a really, really bad boy, and he learns to be a good boy. Astro Boy, he wants to be a real boy, and his father, the man who built him, rejects him because he realizes that a robot can't replace his dead son. And Mega Man is a more optimistic version of that story. So if Pinocchio is about Pinocchio being a bad boy, and if Astro Boy is about Astro Boy being rejected by the father who built him and having to find an adopted family, Mega Man is that story with a much more bright and optimistic feel. So Mega Man is a very good boy. Rock is his real name. And Dr. Light, the father who built him, he's a good father. But it still has that same energy of he's not quite human, but he wants to be like a human. He wants to become a human. But it's I don't know whether this is true of like older versions of this story or the video games, but at least in the context of this universe, Mega Man is clearly a robot who is human-like, but does not have a human soul. And then Mega Man X is when Dr. Light kind of he solves the equation and he figures out how to make robots that are truly autonomous and truly have their own will. So that's like the fantasy conceit of it. And I'm really interested because it's I always wondered, well, gee, what does Mega Man X have to do with Mega Man? It looks like they're trying to tell a story where they're going to like bridge the gap between the Mega Man series and the Mega Man X series. So this is good for Mega Man fans. This is good for fans of old Pinocchio and Astro Boy stories. And this is our boy Zach. He gives me so many terms to describe things. This is probably the perfect, we're going to grandma's house. Here, take this comic book, read it, and shut up and don't fight with your siblings while we're driving 3 hours to grandma's house book. That's the kind of book this is. And one of the reasons it's so good is I can read volume 8. I haven't read volumes 1 through 7, and I can still get into this and understand what's going on and be interested to check out volumes 1 through 7. For art, several artists working on it, and all of them, I think, do a good job of modeling the Capcom style. Like for a character like Mega Man, I think him looking like he's looked in like there've been several redesigns of him over the years, but I think kind of like the slick, cartoony anime mashup look that Capcom gives its characters, really sharp, really clean. I think that's important, and all the artists pretty much model that style effectively. So if you're a fan of that Capcom-esque style, they accomplish that. And visually fun, visually clean, really solid comic work. So I want to just flip through it a little bit just to give you an idea. It opens kind of, since it's volume 8, the previous volumes were like Mega Man saving the world from Dr. Wily twice and ending a world-ending problem. And here's an example of maybe some of like the human drama of Pinocchio being brought in. So Roll is Dr. Wily's third robot, Rock's little sister, Rock and Roll. I also like the solution how in Japan he's called Rockman, in English he's called Mega Man. So they just have the idea that Rock's his normal name and Mega Man's his superhero name. There are a few little weird translation things like that, like Proto Man in the games is called Breakman here for some reason. I guess they wanted to maybe bring back the Japanese originals or something. I'm not a Mega Man expert, but in this little scene, like Mega Man nearly killed himself beating the evil Ra Moon alien overlord. And so then there's like a little emotional touching scene where Roll kind of wishes that she was the one who volunteered to be made into a living weapon, right? Because being a soldier kind of sucks, and putting your butt on the line kind of sucks. So even little things like that add a lot of depth to what are, were pretty much originally like little 8-bit sprite characters that you run across the screen left to right and press pew pew. They also do an interesting thing with Dr. Wily where he's sort of a generic super evil supervillain in the games. And they have this idea that Dr. Wily is melodramatic and selfish, which is that he'll find a reason to be angry at the world and angry and resentful of Dr. Light that kind of makes sense. So it's like they're trying to make him a little bit more of a developed character, but he's clearly still selfish, still prideful, and still creating his own fall. And I like that. It turns him from just like evil Mr. Mustache Man into a since Mega Man is a more pure, innocent, good character, unlike Pinocchio, who was a very rotten little puppet in the original book. That means that Dr. Wily is taking on more of like some of the evil personality aspects to contrast with Mega Man. So Mega Man is selfless and compassionate towards all human life. Wily is selfish and only thinks of his own self and his own glory. And that's what leads to this kind of tragic fall. There's also some interesting things they do with the other robots. So if I'm remembering the original game right, originally Dr. Light builds the robot masters and Dr. Wily steals them to turn them into his evil tools. And then Dr. Wily starts building his own robot masters. In this, they give the robot masters some spotlight, which is cool because one of the weird things about the Mega Man franchise is the bad guys define it a lot. You want to fight some cool robot masters. They've even had like design contests for kids to design robot masters. These are very fun, very simple, little kid robot designs. And I think that's the appeal of Mega Man. So they try to, rather than just have like Mega Man destroy them and they're dead and gone, they try to give the robot masters some things to do in the background to keep them kind of relevant to what's going on. So Mega Man, because he's compassionate, decides he's going to try to help clear Dr. Wily's name, since Dr. Wily turned to the light side at the last minute and helped them defeat the evil monster. They think that maybe Dr. Wily was innocent the whole time. Spoilers: he's Dr. Wily. Of course, he's going to turn evil. And they come up with some new, I think, what are some new characters like other robot designers. So rather than just have Dr. Light and Dr. Wily as, good and evil, they have some other perspectives and other geniuses who build like these numerous numbers and numbers and numbers of robots. And they give the different characters a little bit of a different perspective. So if Dr. Light is sort of the eternal optimist, he's, very forgiving. He's maybe a little too forgiving of Dr. Wily. And if Dr. Wily is prideful, then these two dudes, Dr. Pedro Astil and Dr. Mikhail Kosak, even though they're minor characters, they offer kind of a viewpoint counter. So Pedro Astil has been hurt by, the near destruction of the world. He has a family stake in this, and he kind of copes. He copes by trying to solve the problem. Mikhail Kosak has a daughter he cares about, so even if he's in a dangerous situation, he copes by kind of like narrowly fixating on protecting his daughter, and he's more pessimistic than Dr. Light. So when Dr. Light's willing to give Dr. Wily a second chance and a third chance and a fourth chance, Mikhail's a bit more judgmental and says, enough of that. What's it going to take to convince you that there's no good in Dr. Wily? I like that. I like that there's a little philosophical back and forth between these characters over what could have been just a simple Wily's bad, Light is good. Now it's Wily's bad, but kind of has some motivations to his badness. Light is good, but he's too good. He's too forgiving and too optimistic. And they do this really neat thing with the Robot Masters, where they have kind of like a band of brotherhood as they're sort of going rogue and doing their own thing. So that's cool, because the Robot Masters are a big part of the appeal of these books. And they even have this thing where they kind of somewhat, like, it's Mega Man with PTSD, but it's not like, they're having Mega Man have real human emotions like fear after having a near-death experience, but they're not like shoving it in your face and making it like, you know, edgelord grimdark Mega Man. He deals with his PTSD in kind of a very human way that I think any child could appreciate. I don't know about this Quake Woman character, aka Tempo. This is the thing that makes me want to go back and look at the volumes, because there's apparently an entire backstory to her that they do a pretty good job hinting at in the dialogue, but Ian uses her story to kind of bring out the problems of what if you had robots that were nearly humans. You know, would you treat them like people? Would they just be robots who act like humans, or is there a sense in which they're people too? And there's this great back and forth between, I always think of him as Proto Man, Break Man, and Quake Woman, about, you know, are we people? Who are we? Why are we here? That kind of stuff. And what's sweet about this is the unifying theme of this is redemption. So there's the redemption for Tempo and her mother figure. And then there's the question of, well, can Wily be redeemed, or is he irredeemable? And I don't think Mega Man needs to be redeemed because he's already a pure character, but how will he cope with his emotional fallout from what's happened to him? And they also do a good job of, some of these are kind of talky issues. They do a good job of bringing some action into the talky issues. There's like a great Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney reference for Capcom fans when Wily's on trial. His lawyer is more than a little like Phoenix Wright, and the judge is more than a little like the judge from the Phoenix Wright games. So this is a blast. I think this would be great for, obviously this would be great for Capcom fans and Mega Man fans. I think this would be great for kids who don't know much about Mega Man, because it does a good job of just telling the story without too much reliance on the games. I think this would be a neato thing for fans of Astro Boy or Pinocchio to kind of see a contemporary retelling of that story. This is a great scene where it sort of hints at why Dr. Light is as forgiving as he is. And even if he's kind of naive, it's because he wants to give Dr. Wily the chance to redeem himself. And it's sweet. You're getting multiple perspectives, right? So at first I'm thinking Dr. Wily's way too forgiving. They got to throw Dr. Light is way too forgiving. They got to throw Dr. Wily in jail and throw away the key. And then they'll kind of give you a perspective of why it actually would be good to have forgiveness and an opportunity for a criminal like Dr. Wily to redeem himself. This is great stuff. You know, I didn't expect like a Mega Man book to touch on all this great stuff. And then they do, they're sort of simultaneously doing a Mega Man X series. And my headcanon is that Mega Man X is Mega Man. It's just that Dr. Light, you know, finished his, you know, master plan. Now, I don't know that much about Mega Man, though, so maybe X is supposed to be an entirely different character than Mega Man X, but what they're going to do is, like, as they're telling the Mega Man story, they're also going to tell some Mega Man X stories. And the idea of Mega Man X is that he is a human in terms of his thinking and his emotions. He has a soul, effectively. But then his coming into the world sort of ushers in like this dangerous situation where humanity starts building all these robots that are copied after X, but they're not really ready to handle it or deal with the fallout of, you know, robots taking over the world, essentially. And he's got such, I really like X's design. It's so slick and it's so kick butt. And I think I love Mega Man X even more than I love the old Mega Man games. And I won't spoil it. They're going to do something. They're going to find some way to connect Mega Man X directly with the Mega Man franchise. I'm not sure in what way yet, but the promise that I'll get some answers for what Mega Man X has to do with the original Mega Man, that to me is a great hook. They do some fun little comics like a lot of manga artists do, like a 4-coma at the end with some little, you know, one-note gag humor. I love this cover because that's like the awful European box art Mega Man, and the artist took that and then did this whole dope scene. that would be a riot. I didn't like this cover too much because I thought it was a little too messy. Like Zero's cutting the robot in half, so there's a sword and there's like all the energy of it, but it took a little while to interpret what was going on there. I love the pencil sketches and inks, of course, because you get to see like very slight revisions where, kind of like pencilly sketching out the smoke there and then cleaning it up and tightening it a bit more. Like, it's showing you how the vision might have changed. Like, this might have been a little bit more of a smoky and hazy scene, and this became a more clear and defined scene. It's really, really clean pencil work. This is all Spaziante, I think, and Spaziante is my favorite from this. Maybe because it's the X style, and I kind of dig the X style. But really dope book. Archie Comics, I think, did something really special with the Mega Man franchise and the Mega Man property that would appeal even to kids who aren't necessarily Mega Man fans. It's bright, colorful robots fighting and good, like, emotional thinking about some of the issues of are robots with feelings like people? Are they people? What is forgiveness? Why should you forgive? Are you completely defined by your parents? They're doing a lot of good stuff. So props to Ian Flynn, I think, for this excellent volume. It does exactly what a beat up copy of Volume 8 of Mega Man should do. It told me this is a good series. You got to go find volumes 1 through 7. So with that, I'm #1 Marmaduke fan. I love you guys. I love my patrons on Patreon, and I'll catch you later.